I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. I'm so glad that you are with me today, wherever it is that you happen to be listening. And I am looking forward to introducing you to a guest that I'll be having here in just a few moments, a fellow named Kirk Chisholm, who's an expert in finance and investments and creative IRAs and alternative types of investments and all kinds of things. We're going to talk about inflation and many, many more things like that. So if you're looking forward to figuring out what your finances are, getting your finances in order, well, I don't know if this will solve that problem for you, but it at least might perk up your sensibilities a little bit to consider doing that if you haven't done so already. And if you are, congratulations, making sure that those things that you are doing are headed in the right direction. Look, it took a while for us to get to where we are as a family here, to get Sunnyside in shape, and the amounts of time and investments that it took, not just financially, but physically, and that sweat equity and all of that other good stuff. It took a plan, and planning was something that we started doing almost 20 years ago together as a couple. My wife and I, Heidi, did a lot to make sure that we had resolved our debts, and we had prepared and planned and put money away so that we can accomplish the goals that we wanted to achieve for us, for our family, in the long term. And look, as a couple of Gen Xers, my wife and I, as we get closer to that age of retirement, whatever you think that age happens to be, we're still we're still quite a ways away from that as far as the years go. But it is approaching, and so in the next 15 or 20 years, I suppose, we'll be in that window where allegedly Social Security is going to come in and supplement our income. Now, if you're a Gen Xer like I am, you probably have spent most of your life not believing that Social Security is going to actually be there for you. And I am still kind of skeptical that it is going to be there for us, for me, and for people my age. Of course, a lot of Gen Xers felt that way, and now that's changing because as we get older, we start getting closer to being able to collect that Social Security, and all of a sudden our feelings change. Obviously, our parents' generation, the baby boomers, and the silent generation, they are and have been collecting the Social Security benefits now for a while, and will continue to do so. And I do not see that changing much. So we're kind of right in the middle. If you're my age, if you're born between, I suppose, 1965 and 1984, and you're a Gen Xer, then we're in that middle spot, I think, where the generations before us have the benefits of if you consider them to be benefits of a Ponzi scheme that I think Social Security is, or socialist security, as I like to call it, then you probably will continue and receive those benefits. I don't see that changing. First of all, it's an incredibly large voting block, and they're going to get theirs regardless. But the rest of us have been contributing and will continue to contribute to those unfunded liabilities, such as Social Security and those types of programs that the government set up initially to make us feel like as a society we were taking care of our widows and children. It was an insurance program, and that we were supposed to figure out a way to, help secure the future of the elderly, and particularly also those in need. So whether it was widows, elderly widows, or elderly folks who were in need of additional funds, because they were in poverty, then that was what Social Security was supposed to do. And it was supposed to also help out orphans, and it's supposed to help out people who were disabled, and it does do those things. And those things are things that a society such as ours can accomplish together. And I suppose you can, justify to some degree having the government do that. Now, I think that the average age for a person who collects Social Security is in the 30s, their 30s, mid 30s. So it's really not for those folks that are beyond 65, or if you are less than 64 years of age right now, when you are 67, you should be able to collect those Social Security benefits if they are still there. But we have a problem in this country. We have a problem with Social Security. This isn't an episode about Social Security. This is how I'm starting, because it's so important for us to plan for our retirement, whatever you think that might be. And so, and it's something that I'm not an expert in. And to be honest, I'm not particularly proud of the way that I personally set myself up for success in my retirement, because I wasn't saving money for most of my life. And so I come at this from maybe a little bit different angle than certainly as an investor or person. I'm not giving advice, but other than that, you should save and you should pay off your debts and get out from under those types of things. And so one of the things that we start with, I guess, is taking a look at Social Security, because that is not a retirement plan. That is not a pension plan. The average Social Security benefits annually are $22,000. So if you are thinking that you're going to live on $22,000 a year, then I think that you're going to be in trouble. And I don't think that you should want to live on $22,000 a year. And I don't know what other types of supplemental income you intend to have, but those types of incomes also affect, some of the other things that you can do regarding retirement. So there's just all kinds of crazy things that, in my opinion, when it comes to our retirements, you're on your own, and you have to be on your own, because if you're not taking care of yourself, mark my words, no matter what the politicians say, they are not there to help you. They are there to help themselves and keep themselves in power. And so if they're going to give you a line about how they're going to help all of the people in their aged years find a way to be able to pay for things, and whether it's through Social Security or whatever, it's all a lie. It's something that is intended to make you vote for a politician and a party and keep them in power, and then the results of it are just convoluted as all get out. And so there's a lot of things regarding a person's retirement and being prepared to retire that we need to dig into. We're not going to get into it all in this episode, and I'm not, again, the expert in this. I just know this. If you are my age or younger and you're counting on Social Security to be there for you, you are sadly mistaken. I think that is a huge mistake for you to consider, and I don't think that you should even plan on Social Security as part of your retirement, quote unquote. You should be planning that on your own, setting yourself up for success, making your money work for you, and it doesn't matter whether you make $1 zillion. It's certainly easier and to put money away when you make $1 zillion, however much that is, or you make very, very little money. If you're getting by on less than a couple $1,000s a month, you can still find a way to put money in the bank or in a retirement plan. And depending on your age, you can find out that, I guess if you put $100 away and you start at the age of 18 years old, and you do that for 40, 50 years, you put $100 a month away, you're going to be a $1.1 million. You're going to be a millionaire. What will a millionaire be if you're 18 right now, and in 50 years from now and you're 68? What will that accomplish? I don't know, because $1 million is certainly not what it was 10 years ago, let alone what it was 100 years ago. And so maybe in the future, many, 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 many more people will be millionaires, quote unquote, but it doesn't mean much if the millionaire is the new thousandaire. And that is in large part based on who you vote for and the type of people that continue to print money and cause inflation and all of the other things that the government does that is, in my opinion, nefarious. Whether it's intentional or not, the government wants you to be dependent upon them. And so that was part of the Great Society. That was part of the New Deal. The idea would be that we would give you a new deal, and then you would come to rely on the government, and we would all lift each other up together. And this is ironic that it happened at the same time that we're dealing with the socialists over in Germany and the National Socialists known as the Nazis, and we're dealing with the communists on the in Russia and in China and the Communist Revolution that we dealt with a Cold War for over 50 years. And yet, at the same time, we have this mentality that if we all just contribute a little bit and pay it forward at the same time, then somehow we'll be able to do the same thing. The baby boomers were the largest generation in American history. After World War II, that's why they're called the baby boomers, there was a baby boom. And they had lots of kids. They came back from war and they wanted to make families and make babies and get started. And they certainly did that. And so the largest generation in history is, in my case, my parents' generation. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they didn't have as many kids as their parents did. They didn't. They had things maybe just they had different politics, different changes in our society, and they decided that they weren't going to have as many kids as their parents did. And I'm not getting into advocating one way or the other for birth control or all of the different rates of birth rates in our society. Our birth rate. Our mortality rate has gone up. People are living longer, and we don't have as many kids that are supposed to replace the workers, and then those workers then are supposed to pay this socialist tax to socialist security, and then that is going to continue to take care of their parents and their grandparents and so on and so forth. So we're not having enough kids. We've got lots of people who are going to live for a long time, which is wonderful to have multi-generational families. Those multi-generational families, the older folks, are out there and traveling and experiencing life and really enjoying the benefits of being really the wealthiest generation in American history, which is what the baby boomers now are. And so the question is, if you're a Gen Xer like me, okay, what are we going to do about it? Because one, I think fairly, that the government isn't going to be there to take care of me, and I wouldn't want them to anyway. Like the last people that I want helping me out with my retirement planning is the government. They're just clearly not good at managing money. Give me an example of how the government is good at managing money. I'll wait. Okay, Mr. Jones, I have your tax returns ready for filing. I'll just run over a few of the highlights on your taxes this year. Let's see. It looks like you'll be able to claim those 4 children you adopted after all, since you declared your home a sanctuary home and the governor of Texas sent some kids your way last fall. Yeah. Oh, and here you'll see there's a new fee for filing your taxes without having been vaccinated for COVID-19.
Oh, what did you?
Yes. I know that's a lot of money to be charged for not getting the shot, but those 30,000 new IRS agents have to mitigate the risk of processing your paperwork and catching the virus we have all had at least once already. I'm sorry. Yes, well, but okay. But since we're on the subject of bad news, Mr. Jones, this may be the best time to jump down to line 38B. Yes, that's your share of the Ukrainian support package from last year. Yes, I know, Mr. Jones. $9,977 is a lot of money to pay personally for the Ukrainian effort, but we can't have all those Ukrainian government workers go without pay and benefits while there's a war going on over there, can we? What's that? What about your pay and benefits? Well, Mr. Jones, your pay benefits our government, and in this case, the foreign governments of our government. Okay, Mr. Jones. We'll file an extension for you while you find that third job. Okay, bye-bye now.
They're going to check on the accounts for the super wealthy, which require a lot of accounting. A lot of aides to look at it. They want to get rid of them.
They're not, and they don't know how to budget anything. The new economists in today's world have convinced themselves through the help of an echo chamber of the universities that you can spend as much money as we want as a nation. It isn't the same thing as budgeting at your local and your individual level. That government budgets are different and special, and don't look over here because we can't further explain it. And so I feel like most of us understand that we personally need to get our budgets under control. We have to live within our means, and yet we're constantly being encouraged by our society to spend, borrow. It's okay. We have folks in government who use equity measures and inclusion and all kinds of race-baiting techniques through politics to, and not just through race, but just, I guess from the economic differences between classes or in class warfare, where we'll say, well, we're going to make it easier for people to buy homes regardless of what their credit is. And of course, we saw in 2008 what happens when you do that. So you have, I think, maybe well-intentioned politicians who are not very good with numbers and not particularly good at balancing the books and don't really have any consequences for failing in that way, setting up all kinds of problematic hurdles and programs that on the face of it can be branded and marketed in a pretty successful manner. And since most Americans, including myself, are not experts in finance and don't take a lot of time thinking about our own retirement or putting money away, we're the perfect pawns to be lorded over by knuckleheads in Washington who are, and in maybe in the at the state levels too, who are perfectly content of running outside of budgets. And it's not as much on the not as much on the state side, because they can't print money, as Kirk Chisholm will say later on in our interview. But the federal government can just print money. They can get those the mints fired up and running and churning out bills, and who cares? They'll just print more money. And the problem, of course, is that there's a cost to all of that. It does cost you. Inflation is a tax on all of your goods and services because everything goes up. Just like if you increase the minimum wage, that is actually a tax on your goods and services, because what happens to the cost of a gallon of milk when you have to raise the price to $15 or make it $20 or $25, or why not $100 an hour for the minimum wage, which the minimum wage does exist, and it's zero. Zero is the minimum wage, by the way. And so there's just a zillion things that we could talk about when it comes to finance. And like I said, I'm not an expert in it, but I wanted to get somebody who was, because I think it's important that we understand that Social Security isn't going to be there. That's not a retirement plan. That's a stupid retirement plan. You shouldn't even include it in whatever retirement plan that you've got. And I know that financial advisors will kind of roll that in there and say what your money would be. But let's just assume, as we did when we did our financial planning, like let's assume retirement without Social Security. Let's assume it doesn't exist. Let's assume that the government doesn't have our best interest in heart, and we're going to live hopefully for a long time, and that Social Security isn't going to be there. So let's figure out our retirement based on no Social Security, which is how things were done prior to 1930 something, when FDR brought forth the New Deal, and people were supposed 65. That was the age you were supposed to. The Social Security benefits were to kick in, because that was the average lifespan. You weren't probably going to live much beyond 65 anyway. But today, people are pushing 70, 80, 90 years old. In our family, we have a tendency to go deep into our 90s. And so what are we going to do? And what are most Americans going to do? And as medical procedures get better and our health management gets better and better, we should be living longer. Now, actually, on a sidebar, it turns out that in the last few years, in the last 10 years, actually since Obamacare started, we've actually gone down in our life expectancy. That's so weird. How could that be? But anyway, the point is we're living longer. We don't have as many workers to replace Social Security. We're not going to just invent workers unless we just open our borders, and maybe that's what they're trying to do. I'm not sure. But regardless, these social benefits, these socialist benefits, in my opinion, that redistribute wealth, that as a Ponzi scheme in Social Security, and it's not a savings account. You're not putting the money that's the 7.5% that you put, that comes out of your check for you, and the 7.5% that that your employer puts towards it. That 15% isn't sitting in a little account with your name on it for the future gaining interest. No, it's going out immediately and paying grandma and grandpa for Social Security, and they need that benefit. So that's not going to change. Like, we're not going to take it away from grandpa and grandma. That's not going to change. So if you're a Gen Xer and younger, this is our problem, because I guarantee you that voting bloc isn't going to do a dang thing to change the benefits that they feel entitled to for the rest of their lives with Social Security. So we have to figure out how we can take care of ourselves and assume that Social Security will not be there, because it was never intended to be your pension plan. Now, that being said, less than 50% of Americans have enough money saved away, or have any money saved away for retirement in any type of investment program. Less than half of us do anything like that, and even less, like 9%, have over have like $500,000 or more. $500,000, that'd be great, wouldn't it? No, $500,000. What if your expenses are, well, even if they're $50,000, that's 10 years. So you're going to start collecting your retirement, and you're going to go for 10, 12 years. And then what? Die or become a ward of the state? So how much money do you actually need to have? What are things going to cost for the next 40 or 50 years that you intend to be alive, or however long, hopefully that is? Do you have enough money? How do you get that money to work for you? And all of these are questions that we need answers to. I think that good practice starts for all of us to make a budget. And despite what Congress does, we have to make a budget for ourselves, and we have to be realistic, and we probably have to cut a lot of the crap out of our budgets. We have a lot of things socially that, society, to engage in conversation and just kind of be part of things, cost us money at every single turn. We're buying things that we probably don't need, and we have to figure out what those things are, eliminate those things. And I will tell you, Heidi and I did Dave Ramsey stuff a long time ago, and I believe in the snowball effect, not because he invented it, it's just common sense. He might have given it that moniker, but you take some money and you pay off your smallest debt and get it gone. Then the money that you have that you were paying on minimum payments towards that, you can apply towards the next smallest debt that you can pay off entirely, and so on and so forth. And it snowballs until eventually you don't have a mortgage anymore. And when you don't have that mortgage that's pulling you down with thousands of dollars a month or whatever it happens to be, now you do have additional money. And you don't have to drive brand new vehicles even if you can pay for them in cash. As Dave Ramsey would say, that's not always a great investment. So we drove used vehicles all the time, most of the time. Only until really in the last 5 years have we purchased any new vehicles. And so that is something that we did and we endured. And believe me, it's not cool when you show up to work rolling in a grandpa, 1997 blue 4-door Oldsmobile. But I think we paid like $1,500 for that car, paid cash, and I drove it literally until it would not drive anymore. And then we just got a different one. So I drove that for like 3 years to work every day, put on 30-some thousand miles a year, and then got a different beater vehicle and did that over and over and over again. And so some of that has translated to our kids, where they, my son Tanner just recently bought a used truck, a nice one. It's just a couple, 2-3 years old or whatever it is. But before that, he was driving, a 2013 Malibu, and I think he's probably pushing 400-some thousand miles on that bad boy, and it got good mileage. He took care of it, and that's just kind of the way it is, because a vehicle is a depreciating asset, and so are boats, for that matter. Until recently, until COVID happened, actually. Now boats are actually kind of an investment. I wouldn't look at it as an investment, so don't take that advice. But it's very rare that boats have ever been on the other side of a good buy. So there's just lots of things that we have as luxury items. There's lots of things that we buy that it's so easy to get that we can just go point, click, and it's delivered to our house conveniently, amazingly quickly, within a day or two, or maybe some places even on the same day. So we are definitely a consumer society. We're spending money like crazy, and we're not putting any of it away. And so we need to take a look at those things, make a budget, cut our costs, pay off our bills, and then you need to be able to avoid debt just in general. Don't live off credit cards. And that's an easier thing that's said than done, I realize. But once you free yourself from the bondage of interest that is working against you, I think that your life is going to be obviously much, much, much better. And so there's just a lot of different things that you can do that are common sense, but we don't talk about that with our kids in our families very often. We don't teach them how to budget. We don't do a great job teaching them the value of the dollar. And it's hard to figure out what the value of the dollar is when we continue to depreciate the value of the dollar by just printing more money so that we can pay for our programs and pretend like everything's okay politically, because everybody should have everything. And why should anybody ever want for anything? And on and on and on and on. So there's all kinds of issues that we need to consider, but to have a retirement for yourself, you have to be engaged. You have to know, have an idea of what you're doing, and you have to be willing to find a person, I think a professional, that can help you work with you to do the things that you need to do so that you actually have the money that you need to retire, so that you have an income when you're not working and when you're out there, in your, 70s, 80s, 90s, and have a place to call home. They're not paying a mortgage. You're not paying interest on other debts. You have a comfortable income. You don't have to go on crazy exploits and all of that, so that you have money for the things that life costs money. And when people fail to plan, what's the old saying? They plan to fail. And I think that as a society, we have, when it comes to our financial planning, just been planning to fail and hoping that somebody in Washington, D.C., in the Social Security Administration or somebody will take care of us. And I'm a grown man. I don't want the government to take care of me and rely on them for Social Security or those type of things. I have a pension from the Army, and so it seemed like, oh, Troy, you obviously rely on the government to give you your money. And I'm like, well, yeah, they pay me a pension, which, by the way, is like the worst type of financial benefit that you can come up with. I mean, there's just like the pensions are the dumbest financial plan for anybody except for the person who's receiving them. So most of those government pensions, the military has moved away from the pension plan, put in 20 years and get a pension, and that's what I did, because I came into a time when that's what I could do. And so that was my retirement plan. It was like, well, if I put in the time, I did 26 years, I get a pension for doing that. And because of that, I foolishly didn't do a lot of other investing or other saving at all. And so that's since that time, we've done a lot of things, and my wife's always been much smarter about those things than I have, to be honest with you. So I don't think that I wouldn't say I rely on the government necessarily for that pension. I guess if the pension goes away, we'll still be okay. I'm not hoping that is what happens. But whether it's a pension for the government or if it's a pension for, GM, you worked on the assembly line for 30, 40 years and now you've got a pension. Then it's a union pension. Those things are bad deals, and they are not good for the consumer, or in my case, I guess the taxpayer. So the military has moved away from pensions, and now they have an investment plan similar to what the most corporate Americans are doing. Anyway, so we're going to talk in a little bit here, actually right around the corner, with a great guy that I found who's out in Lexington, Massachusetts, and his name is Kirk Chisholm, and he is, according to Investopedia, the 7th most influential fella when it comes to marketing. He's got a great understanding of inflation. He's got a great understanding of alternative IRAs and different types of investments. And then a great conversation that we're going to have about educating our youth and explaining to them that you have to start saving now. You have to start putting something away. No one is going to be there to take care of you. And that is completely upside down from how we have been raising our kids for the last 20 or 30 years, or maybe even longer. We've kind of said, hey, look, somebody's going to take care of you. We're going to make sure you're up. We're going to make sure you go here. Make sure you go to all your ball games. We're going to pick you up. We're going to do everything we possibly can for you. We're going to send you to college. We're going to pay for your college. What kind of idiot pays for why would you pay for your kids' college? That's their education. I paid for my education. My wife paid for her education. You're on your own, sweetheart. Go get your education. The parents, they want it. We all want to set our children up for success, and so we do everything we possibly can. And some parents are so evil that they're even, calling people's, their kids' bosses and negotiating. And I was just like, good Lord, let go. But when it comes to financial planning, we don't do that. And as Kirk will tell us, I think it's because, we don't know what we're talking about either. So enough of me rambling on about why it's important to invest and plan for the future, because we've got just the best person that we can talk to about that. And that guy is Kirk Chisholm. So let's go ahead and bring Kirk online. Well, I'm happy to be joined today on the Sunnyside of Life by phone with Kirk Chisholm. So the number... this is what caught my eye. The seventh most influential financial advisors, according to Investopedia's top 100. And so, hi, Kirk. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm well. I'm happy to have you on the program. I was looking at your stuff there. We were exchanging some things by email a little bit, and you're from Lexington, Massachusetts, which I've been there. I like that town.
Yeah, it has a little historical meaning. So
yeah, well, it sure does. You're coming up on the 250th next year. That's the 250th anniversary of the first battle of the Revolution, the Battle of Lexington, in April the 19th, I think, there. And I was just out there in Lexington a couple of years ago, back in 2022. That was a good time. I might have walked by your office. Who knows?
Probably not, but
okay.
Yeah, we're tucked away. We're not right in the middle of the historic, glitzy center of town, but we're it's good. It's a good place.
It is.
Boston's a good area for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got my Minuteman National Historical Park hat here that I happen to be wearing today, and didn't even think about it. And then I was like, oh, well, this is going to tie in perfectly. So, great place to visit, folks. If you haven't been, you need to get out there and check out our nation's history. And obviously, that's Lexington is a big part of that. And then on to Concord, and of course, we love Boston and the Boston area in general. So that's not what we're going to talk about today, Kirk. We've got an expert wealth manager with Innovative Advisory Group, and I've been doing this for about 25 years. Is that right?
Yeah. I started in this industry in December of '99, and right out of college, and probably one of the worst times to start. The market went down for 3 years after that, and been doing this since then. So 25 years. Time flies.
Well, it's probably a good thing for you. Actually, I mean, it may not. In retrospect, if you can make it through the first 3 years of your career after college in an investment market that's down, and still find the sunny side of life, so to speak, in as you talk to potential investors and clients, it obviously worked out for you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people struggle out of college figuring out what to do, and I always kind of knew what I wanted, and in the middle of college, I took 6 different internships at 6 different firms and financial firms. And, this is in the late 90s when all the advisors at the time were telling me, don't get in the field, kid. Like it's going away. And, discount brokers are going to take all our business, and all the old duffers were claiming that. And yet, the industry's still here. I didn't believe them then because, I thought it was kind of short-sighted, but they been hearing that all the time. There's always something that's going to take our business, and never really does. It's just our industry always adapts.
People still need to invest. And interesting, I read a statistic on your website there with the IAG and just getting some information, I guess, about self-directed IRAs, which I hope we'll talk about here very quickly. But surprising, let's say, 60% of households in the U.S., according to your website, have hold retirement accounts, and only about 32% of them have the IRAs. And then of those, 4% have only 4% have the alternative investments, and that's the field that you've sort of specialized in, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, the self-directed IRAs are interesting. I mean, the term is used by different people to mean different things. So a self-directed IRA is basically a retirement account. Well, first of all, all IRAs are self-directed.
Right.
So this is kind of the misnomer is every IRA out there is self-directed, but the term self-directed IRA is typically used to define an IRA account that can hold alternative assets. Now, if you go Google that, you might see, like a Schwab or Fidelity use the term as well. They do not do that, but they use the same term. So it does get a little bit co-opted, but the real use of it that most people use comes down to alternative assets and held in retirement accounts. And, frankly, when we got into the field back in 2008, I think there were 2 other advisors in the U.S. that do this, and neither one advertises, and they don't want any more business. So makes us de facto the only advisor that will do this business. And we enjoy it because people get really creative. They can invest in anything: horses, houses, private companies, physical gold, airspace rights, fishing rights, cows. I mean, you name it, you could do it. And it makes a lot of fun because we get to see some really interesting investment ideas that people come up with.
So let's get into that a little bit. I mean, that is very exciting. And Peter Lynch says, according to your website there, and I think a lot of people know, invest in what you know. Warren Buffett echoes that sentiment for sure. So why don't people, they say, well, I got an IRA, and then and you said all IRAs are self-directed, but they give you a list of the ones you can pick from. Here, pick from these 40 that we've got here for you to choose from. And you're saying people can do something completely different. Why don't people do that?
Well, it's funny because when the IRA part of the tax code was created, it was created, and the brokerage firms came out and said, hey, this is more money that people can put in their retirement account and that can be used to invest in traditional securities, which is how they make their money, right? So they're not going to advertise something they don't sell. And, you can't blame them for that. So there's no conspiracy. There's no person out there, with there's no Dr. Evil out there saying, oh, we don't want people to know about it. It's just the industry is situated around the most marketing dollars around securities, and that's what people know. So that's why only 4% of the public is invested into alternatives in retirement accounts, because they just don't know about it. Less than 10% of the people are even aware that it's possible. So, if you think about the Schwabs, the Fidelity, the Merrills, the Morgans, the Goldmans of the world, they're all focused on traditional securities, and they're not going to tell you can do something else because they don't sell that. But there are companies that will custody assets that are alternative, and there's like approximately 50 of them, and they don't advertise. Like they do, but they're not really advertising in a traditional way, so you probably haven't heard of them. So it's an interesting space. I wish more people knew, but I'm not sure that would help, because a lot of investors just need handholding. They're not, they don't have time, they don't have money, they don't have interest, or I shouldn't say they don't have money. They don't have time, they don't have the capacity to understand it, they don't have interest in it. There's so many different reasons people don't go down this road, and that's okay, right? It's not for everybody.
Right.
Like it should be for people who want to do it. If you don't want to spend any time or effort understanding this, then you should have someone else do it, or be an indexer, or some really simple strategy to make this easier for yourself.
Is it pretty labor intensive, or on the part of the customer who's trying to do the self-directed IRA, but and you're also recommending a custodian and finding the right custodian. And I don't want to come back to that, but I know you meant. So is it just more work? Is that why people don't do it, or they're just scared, or a variety of those things?
It's a good question. I'm not sure that it's fear, but the amount of work is basically the same. So if you're buying a piece of real estate, let's use an example.
Okay.
So if I'm buying a real estate, I see a property, I want to go buy it. So I put in an offer gets accepted, then I go to do a P&S, and then I do inspections, and I, get insurance, and I do the closing, and now I own the home. That whole process is the same. It's just your IRA doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
So the process of buying real estate doesn't change. Are there some nuances that make it a little more difficult? Sure. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can't sign, the IRA has to sign, like there's little nuances. You're like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do this. But the process doesn't change. You still have to do a ton of stuff to buy a rental property. That's always the same, whether you do it inside an IRA or out. If you want to buy a horse, you can do that inside an IRA or out. It doesn't change the process. So it's not really more work. It's just more nuance that you have to understand. But the amount of work is the same.
Okay.
I think it's what I've come across is most investors don't know how to invest or don't have something to invest in. And I think that's a struggle. Like a lot of people who come to this area, they get these, delusions of grandeur that they're going to make $1 million overnight from their IRA and they can retire tomorrow. It's just not going to happen. And people who sell them on the idea that it can happen are more frequent in this area. So people just say, oh, this is a good idea. I can invest in all these things. And they open up an account and they fund it. And then the account just sits there because they got them all excited about setting up the account and they didn't tell them what to do once they had it set up.
Okay.
So now these people have money stuck in an account, just sitting there. They don't know what to do. They're scared because they don't know how to invest. And these people can't give them advice. Legally, they can't. So it's just, the problem is there are a lot of players in the industry and it's kind of the Wild West. This is part of the reason we get into it. In the Wild West, meaning that there's not a lot of policemen out there. It's just, there's not a lot of regulators. It's just people operating, and there's a lot of gray areas that are being walked on and stepped over. And so you really have to work with reputable people, and you have to really work with people that we're fiduciaries, so we have a responsibility to do the right thing. But there are a lot of players who have no responsibility whatsoever. I mean, they could take advantage of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And in the securities industry, there are a lot of regulations that prevent that they don't prevent it from happening, but there are a lot more hurdles you have to go over for that to happen. So you just have to do your own diligence and be diligent about the effort you put in.
What would you say the average amount of communication is? Is it a monthly, every couple of months? Is it annually? Is it weekly, or does it vary?
Communication between who?
I'm sorry, the investor with the IRA that holds the IRA and the custodian.
They really don't communicate unless they need something from them.
Okay.
So if the investor wants to buy in real estate, they have to fill out a form that directs them to do certain things, and then they do those certain things based on the form direction. So it's really just the custodian's a custodian. It's like going to the bank. The bank's not calling you up saying, hey, why don't you come down and we can advise you on this. I mean, the bank calls you if you miss something or if they need something, but they're not contacting you otherwise. It's much the same way here. Like these custodians aren't contacting you, contact them if you need something from them.
Okay. All right. So let me. You kind of hit on some of them, but are there some mistakes that people make with the self-directed IRAs?
Yeah, there tend to be a lot because the rules between the self-directed IRA and the traditional IRA that people are used to are the same, but the traditional IRA that people are accustomed to are streamlined, so people don't see the rules. But there are small things like there are required annual valuations for assets held in a retirement account. And you don't see that because if you own securities, it happens for you. You don't have to worry about it. But if you own a horse, every year you have to value it. If you don't value it, it can create problems. Another area that people get in trouble with is when they're, let's say a piece of rental property. So you invest in a piece of rental property and you're not allowed to do any sweat equity. That's one of the rules. You can't do sweat equity. Well, if you own rental property, you're probably a real estate investor. And if you are, you're probably more likely to do the work yourself. So maybe you decide, well, I'm just going to fix the toilet. No, who's going to know about it? Or I'm going to fix the roof. Who's going to know about it? Well, I can tell you the IRS will. They actually know a lot more than you think they do. So, when people are doing things, they tend to skirt the rules because they think no one's going to know.
Right.
There are things you can't do, like you can't loan your IRA money. It can't loan you money. You can't fix the roof on your property. You have to treat it like the neighbor on your street you really don't like. I mean, close to hate. Like that person in your neighborhood, everyone's got one.
Yeah.
You're not going to loan them the lawnmower. They're not going to loan you money. You're not going to go help them fix something for free. You can't do any of that. It has to be arm's length. You have to hire somebody to do the work. You cannot do it yourself. Now, you can hire them. They call functions settler functions. You can hire people. You can administer them. You can pay the bills. You just can't do the manual work yourself.
Nice.
And so that part is something that people miss, and they usually just say, well, I'll skimp here, I'll skimp there. It's like, no, you can't. Like, you're going to get yourself into trouble.
Right, because you're essentially increasing the value of your IRA and in a way of kind of paying yourself. Is that true? Is that
correct?
Yeah. They don't like
well, it depends
in
on
a way.
the transaction.
Right. That's why you
well,
can't.
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. If you were to do a transaction, let's say you were to buy ABC stock, the price is fair, right? Because there's millions of other people who can buy it at that price, so it's a fair price. But let's say you own a piece of real estate and you want to sell the real estate into the IRA. What price do you sell it at? How do you determine fair market? How do you even know what fair market is, right? The IRS doesn't want to get into the squabble of what's the price, how did you determine it? They don't want to get in that game, so they just say you can't do it. You can't lend yourself money. You can't buy a property from yourself and put it in the IRA. Like all of these things. Or like sweat equity. How do you value that? I mean, technically you could probably do it, but they don't allow it because they say, well, how do you value it? Are you doing it for free? Are you overcharging yourself? Like, how are you? There's too much room for misuse and tomfoolery that they just say no. It's easier for them to just say no.
Okay. Well, I want to check on something else here because friends, the Kirk here is also an expert on inflation. Now, how did that happen?
On what?
How did you become an expert on inflation?
Inflation. Oh,
yeah.
I thought you said insulation. I'm like, wait a minute. I think it's the wrong guy.
No, right. Oh, you were talking about home improvements,
yes.
And you're in the Northeast. Yeah, you probably know all about insulation. It's good. We know about it here. Yeah. Just doing that the other day, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, in inflation, it's funny because think about 15 years ago, I started really getting involved with inflation because I saw a lot of dynamics going on that weren't being accurately reported and weren't being accurately calculated, in my opinion. Okay. So what I started to do is I started to look at inflation in a different way. The government looked at it from their numbers. Everybody agrees that they're not accurate, but nobody has any better metrics, so they just accept it. I think that's kind of how inflation works in this country. But I started to notice, I'm like, there's no way inflation's this number. So I started looking at alternative forms. And there were a few sites. There's actually one site run by Google. I think it was Google. I think it was called like A Million Prices or something like that. They were doing a research. They were just taking all these data points and trying to use that to calculate inflation. I was like, this is brilliant. And the number was different from the government number. And then, oddly enough, a year after I found it, they got taken over by one of the banks, and then they don't publish the numbers anymore. So, some of these things, just kind of the good stuff magically disappears into the wet work. But there's another site called Trueflation. I had a guest on my show a while ago, and I feel like theirs is reasonable. But anyway, so I started doing all the calculations, started looking at things, and realized like this isn't affecting real people in the way that it should. And so ultimately it's not just are the numbers fudged, it's are their calculations correct?
Right.
Like, forget whether you believe them. It's how are they correct? Well, according to their calculations, I think it's 45% of inflation comes from cost of your home. So I don't know, is 45% of my budget going to my home? Probably not, but that's how they calculate it. So, they calculate many different things that don't affect me. So people are yelling and screaming, well, yeah, my food prices have gone up 100% in the last 3 years. Yes, they have. And that's a very, very, very small part of inflation. But yet it affects everybody in a significant way.
Right. Small part of inflation on the on the government's figures, but the household, big deal. So let's get started. On the seventh day, Elishama, son of Ammihud, leader of the tribe of Ephraim, presented his offering. This just in. According to current inflation rates, due to the incredible amount of inane government spending and rampant monetary devaluation, the offerings of dedication prescribed by Moses have been adjusted to better reflect the current financial situation. His offering consisted of a silver platter weighing 3¼ pounds, or $1,188.20, and a silver basin weighing 1¾ pounds, or $639.24, as measured by the 2024 adjusted weight value of the sanctuary shekel, which equals 20 gerahs, adjusted for inflation. These were both filled with grain offerings of choice flour moistened with olive oil, valued at $43. He also brought a gold container weighing 4 ounces, which was filled with incense, valued at $9,174.40. He brought a young bull valued at $5,707, a ram valued at $446.48, and a 1-year-old male lamb valued at $700 for a burnt offering, and a male goat valued at $400 for a sin offering. For a peace offering, he brought 2 bulls, valued at $11,414, 5 rams valued at $2,232.41, 5 male goats valued at $2,000, and 5 one-year-old male lambs valued at $920. This was the offering, adjusted for inflation, brought by Elishama, son of Ammihud, totaling $33,676.53.
This is the thing that frustrates me the most, right? So you got inflation. Let's say it's 3% for sake of argument. And somebody's surviving on like $5,000 a month, right, in income. And, let's say $1,000's going to their home, just to make the numbers easy. $1,000 is going to food, $1,000 is going for gas, $1,000 is for, miscellaneous, and let's say $1,000's for taxes. Just make the numbers easy, okay? Now, you're getting by every month. You notice there's no money in there for savings. So they're not saving any money. So there's not a lot of wiggle room at that point. But what if inflation hits and food prices go from $1,000 to $1,500? What if gas goes from $1,000 to $1,500? Well, now there's another $1,000 that you need that you don't have. So what do? Well, you got to substitute. You got to pick and choose. You got to really tighten the purse strings to survive. And unfortunately, most people live on the margin, just like this. So when energy prices go up, when electricity goes up, when home costs, rents go up, when food prices go up, people stop buying, filet mignon, and they start buying hamburgers. They stop buying hamburgers, they start buying Spam, right? So the quality goes down that people can buy. You start eating McDonald's instead of whatever chain you're going to, Ruby Tuesdays or whatever. So that starts to happen. And unfortunately, it's in the last few years, it's really picked up, and it's causing a lot of chaos in our economy. And the powers that be are minimizing its importance, but yet it's probably the most important factor that's affecting every single person's lives in this country.
Absolutely. And right now, we're hearing that inflation is down. Well, it is. I guess based on whatever points they're using, they're saying inflation is down. And of course, it was pretty wicked high about 2 years ago, and it may be down from there. But you might be saying, well, they're not including everything that really matters at the dinner table.
Yeah, what's interesting is the inflation is a very insidious type of thing because most people don't see it, right? Like they're not actually seeing inflation. Technically, it's devaluing the money that you have.
Right.
So if you look back in the last 100 years, our dollar 100 years ago is worth I think it's 2.5 cents compared to a year ago. So it's devalued 97.5% in the last, call it 100 years.
Right.
And the problem with inflation is insidious. It's
creeping.
It's small.
Yeah.
Let's say 3% a year, right? And it's just people have seen it more recently. And here's the other problem. We went through a period of massive, not deflation, but stagnation. And a lot of the cost of goods got cheaper. When I was growing up, you had one TV. You might have had one plunger in the house. Now you got a TV in every room. There's 5 or 6 plungers. There was just there's an abundance of stuff now. But when we grew up, there wasn't.
Right.
And so
that's such a great,
large part
that's
because
a funny.
everything.
That's a funny analogy because I can tell you we have a lot of TVs, and I still think we only have 2 plungers. Which with 4 boys, we probably got that backwards.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if you think about it, right, things have changed and the cost of goods have gotten cheaper. I could tell you that I spend the same amount on a computer today than I spent in the mid 90s. The mid 90s, I always buy not the best computer, but a step down from the best because that's the best value.
Mm-hmm.
It will last you the longest for the price you pay. It always has been that way. So I'm always spending somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500, somewhere in that range. I have for the last 20 years. It hasn't changed. I got the same quality computer. I bought a laptop 12 years ago. I'm still using it. So it's a good value, right? And so when you see that, and on the other side, everything's been cheap. It's oh yeah, you want chips? Yeah, let's give you a double bag. Let's give you a triple bag. But now that inflation's taken hold, now that they're cutting the amount of stuff they give you, they're cutting the size of the bag, they're still raising prices. The inflation is they call that shrinkflation, right? Instead of giving you 5 ounces, they give you 4.5,
mm-hmm.
right? And they make the bag the same size, they give you 4.5 of the stuff. So
mm-hmm.
it's a real problem, and it's not going away because it's fixed into the system, and there's really no way for it to go away in this environment. There are some benefits to it, but long term it ends up in disaster.
So you talk about retirement. I mean, and there's a couple of things there. We're going to head that way. But if somebody's trying to plan for retirement, and I forget the statistic now, but it seems like the person who is the average person who is planning or preparing for retirement is going to run up short against their lifespan or whatever it happens to be. And so, and is that inflation or poor planning or a myriad other things?
I mean, ultimately, it depends on the person and the situation. So it's hard to just give to just say, yeah, it's a flat this. But the typical things that people run into are you've got a combination of poor planning, which is very common. Most people don't start planning until they're in their 40s or 50s, and they're oh, I got to start saving money.
Nailed it.
And of course, kids. Of course, kids cost money, right? And the kids aren't cheap. So you got to put your kid through college, and by the time they're through college, you're 55, and you're ooh, okay, I should start saving now. So that happens a lot. It's not mismanagement. It's just poor planning. And frankly, nobody's taught people how to plan. So I didn't learn how to plan. My parents didn't teach me. My parents were just I don't know, figure it out. They figured it out. They didn't talk about money. We're from, Boston. We don't talk about money, religion, politics, any of that stuff. It's just the way old Yankees, right? That's how they do things.
Yeah. I identify.
But but if you really think about it, so the mismanagement is one of them. So misbudgeting. There's also mismanagement, which some people are just bad at money, which is just normal.
Right.
There's the investing part. there are plenty of people who are bad at investing. And the problem with the investing part is there are some people who just buy things and leave them there forever. They tend to do reasonably well because they just buy and forget.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the market's going up, they're fine. The problem is the market doesn't always go up. But then there's other people who feel like they have to do something every day, and they're constantly twiddling and tweaking and doing this and doing that. That's not healthy either.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're expecting, when you give people control, we're expecting people to know what to do. And in my opinion, from my experience, 5% of the people that I talk to are qualified to invest their own money. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, I think of it as like 80-15-5 rule. Like 80% of the people really don't know what they're doing at all. 15 have some semblance of what's going on. Like, they're not experts, but they know enough to, like, get their hands dirty and to ask questions. And then 5% really know what they're talking about. So if I just use that overlay, then realistically, there are a lot of people just need a professional help. Or they could just be an indexer.
Mm-hmm.
Put their money into an index and forget about it. I don't love that option because you're assuming that the last 40 years are going to be the same as the next 40 years. And I just don't think that's true either. I think pretty much the last 40 years have been a isolated incident where we've been lucky. The market has gone up for 40 years, and I don't think the next 40 are going to be the same. So I don't think the buy and hold is going to hold true all the time. But people have been conditioned that that's true, and I think that's going to be the downfall of a lot of investors. So,
I mean, you hit on a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. You talk about the next 40 years. Kids are facing an expensive future. I mean, I guess we all are, but I mean, getting that, whether you're talking about getting that home or the car, or paying for college, good Lord, it's. I mean, society-wise, it's delaying marriage, maybe starting a family, maybe a lot more than that. I don't know. So, can kids invest with the same confidence as their parents and grandparents these days?
It's a good question. I think, like anything else, you really have to understand what you're doing,
mm-hmm.
right? So can kids invest in the same way? Well, yes and no. If you just start putting money away every single month, I think it's going to be hard to go wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you make $1,000, you're putting $100 away every single month, you're going to be okay eventually, right? Because if you think about it, let's say they start putting money in and the market crashes. Well, it doesn't really matter because they haven't lost that much, right? Like, even if it's after a few years. So maybe it's 20,000, it goes back to 10,000. But they're still young, right? And they're going to earn more as they grow, and they're going to put in more, and they can continue to contribute. So at some point, they're actually buying in at lower prices. So there's a lot of things like that come into play. So I think the challenge I see for the youth right now is that they're not going to have the same opportunities that we had. And that in itself is going to be a problem because people are assuming that, the markets just go up, 8 to 12% a year, and that was what we should expect. Well, not necessarily. I mean, just because it has done that doesn't mean it's going to continue to do that. But people think that that's the truth. And that's the problem, is that when people are making assumptions, they turn out to be wrong. They're very, very wrong. So I still think that the kids will be fine because over long periods of time, things kind of work out. But if we have, call it 10% inflation and the market's staying the same every year, well, let's say you're getting 10% inflation, 10% growth in the markets. Well, that's neutral. It means you're not getting any growth. That in itself is a problem.
Right.
So all these different things they end up being problems in large part because people haven't calculated the numbers properly. So if you think that inflation is going to be 2%, it turns out to be 10%, well, your numbers are so wrong that you're going to probably be in trouble. and that, that's a problem, right?
Right.
And so you need to be realistic and more conservative with your numbers if you want to have success.
Right. Well, I think I told you in my initial email when we started communicating a little bit, I said that when we set our parameters for the future. I am, I guess, conservative when it comes to that, because I was of the opinion that inflation should be at, like 9%, and let's hold our plan at 9%. And I think people were like, wow, let's just keep it at, 4 or maybe 5. I mean, that's aggressive. And I was like, let's keep it at 9. Because if we can do that, we can't go wrong. I think at the time, we weren't too far away from getting to that point or beyond that, depending on what factors you use. And I would say, and I could be wrong, I'm not an economist like you or whatever, but like, I know that they say inflation is down, but I don't know if it's realistically much lower than that 9% anyway.
I think there's always this question of what is accurate inflation.
Right.
In of itself, it's a bit of a problem because it's like, how are you calculating? Is it accurate? And it's really hard to say, right? Like some people, like Shadow Stats has been claiming that it's incorrect because they just use the old stats and say, well, based on the old stats, it's X. And I don't know what's right. Who's to say what the right answer is? Do I think it's higher than they say? Yes. I in the last 15 years, I believe that has been true. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I also think sometimes it's lower than they say too. Like I think over the last 15 years has also been lower at times. So I think they're just trying to like even the ride more than anything else. But, it comes back to that question of how do you calculate it and what's right.
Right.
So I think if you're conservative with your numbers, you'll be better off and you'll make fewer mistakes. And it's just me. So I know a guy who says, well, I always have put away 30% of what I earn. Government gets 30%, I save 30, and the other 40 goes to living. And that's really hard to, in the old days, that was easier. You can't really do that these days because it's just so hard to make enough money, period, just to be able to live and, not live in poverty nowadays. Like,
right.
I can't imagine taking 30% off my income just to save. Like that's it. No, granted, that's the right thing to do, but what college kid wants to not enjoy life when you're young, right? I'm just going to go stay in and not party because I don't have enough money, and you never meet anybody and you never socialize, you never enjoy your youth. It's a hard argument to make. So
right.
We live in a culture
so you can take a riverboat when you're 70 with a bunch of other 70 and 80-year-olds. That sounds really great. To a 24-year-old. Yeah.
Well, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're saving it all till you retire. It's like, well, what if you die?
Yeah.
Right when you retire, then you saved all that for nothing. Then
right.
What's the point of having money?
Well, do you think we've done...
So these are all important points and questions.
Obviously, we haven't done a great job, I think, of educating our kids about finance. And that's a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
This is a stupid plan, okay?
America's youth are in serious trouble.
So, no, we don't do that.
Wait till he's off school grounds. I don't want to kill him right off.
You poor little thing.
No one is teaching them how to become wealthy in the wealthiest nation in history.
Delays can cost you a large chunk of the market.
Student loans.
They're there to mess you over. That's their job.
Insidious banks and credit card companies.
And they're good at it.
Secular values.
A $44,000 SUV when you make $85,000 a year is stupid.
This guy is dangerous.
Are preying on the most vulnerable of our society.
Certain government agencies, which sometimes amounts to pretty much the same thing.
I sure hope the government, which is well known for its ability to handle money, will take care of me. Well, what a stupid butt plan is that?
This summer, from the studios that brought you Moneyball and The Wolf of Wall Street.
Who is he?
A financial mercenary takes over the classroom.
You're a mercenary in it for the money like everybody else.
Just one man can take America's youth to task.
You're not one of our regular subs.
From a Hollywood that's run out of original ideas.
It really is 6th grade or 4th grade math.
The Substitute.
I'm a cuss word in some of your all's houses.
Financial Peace University.
If you don't want to be broke people anymore, you get out of the land of payments.
It's always about the money.
I'll call the wambulance.
Starring Dave Ramsey.
If you'd have followed me around in the last 6 days, you'd be in the hospital, some of you. No wonder you can't breathe. You got payments coming out your dadgum ears, man. Okay, let's just do this. You're a loser. Oh, jeez, I'm going to kill you. Seriously.
The Substitute.
There is no excuse for you to retire broke. Children walking around in grown-up bodies. Adults devise a plan and follow it. Children do what feels good. This ridiculous, impulsive nature of we think we're going to borrow our way into wealth it's out of control, guys. We've got to stop this. That's ridiculous.
This film has not been rated because rating agencies are stupid.
Double, triple stupid.
Yeah, I think the education of youth is one of the biggest problems. The schools don't teach it. The parents don't teach it. The parents don't teach it because they don't know. Like you're asking a non-professional to teach a profession. You can't ask teachers to do it because the teachers don't know.
Right.
Like you want a school teacher to teach about finance when the school teachers are one of the lowest, paid professions in terms of their value. It's much lower.
Right.
Like we don't value teachers because we don't pay them well. And so you want somebody like that who clearly you didn't get into the profession for money. So I'm not saying they're not savvy with money, but because more often than not, they're probably not the experts. It's not like somebody who does it for a living, right? Like,
right.
Finance is not a simple thing to learn, right? So you want someone to teach you how to deal with money when money is complicated for everybody. And then what do you teach them? Teach them to index? Do you teach them to save? How much do you teach them to save? Like, when you get into the public school system, it's like, all right, well, why are we still teaching the government food pyramid, which has been disproven by just about everybody? Why are we still teaching that? So it kind of gets to the point of like, who determines what we're teaching for finance, and then is it accurate? So it's better for the parents just to teach this stuff, but most parents don't know. So the financial education is really hard. It's I know a lot of people were doing good work there, but I think overall there's a lot of challenges there too.
Well, Kirk, we've got, as a nation, $30 trillion in debt. And I guess you could count maybe $100 trillion if you include in unfunded liabilities and things like that. Taxes have to go up. So what's the strategy to, with our investments and all of these things is, to try to, how do we manage that task risk with our investments?
I actually don't agree that taxes are going up. I think
really?
a lot of people say that. Yep.
Okay.
A lot of people say that.
Well, that's good news for me.
We haven't. Well, don't celebrate yet.
Okay. Okay.
So for the last 20 years, people have been saying, "Oh, taxes can only go up from here. They have to go up," but they don't. Why? Well, first off, because people can't afford to pay more. Second off is you start taxing people more and people move.
Mm-hmm.
Like look at California. Look at Maryland Institute of Millionaires tax like 15 years ago. What happened? Like 85% of the millionaires left. So they revoked it and they said, well, that's not a good idea. But what's happening now? New York has one. California's tried to institute a millionaires tax on homes. Like these states, it's like they're run by rubes because, you see clearly this doesn't work and you're trying to do it anyway.
Right.
So the state taxes are going up because they're more desperate. The federal government and the state taxes have to balance. They can't just print money. The federal government, on the other hand, doesn't have to raise taxes because they can just print money to cover it. And that's what they're doing. So you notice the federal taxes haven't really gone up. Fees may have gone up, but taxes have not. If anything, taxes have come down. And they know, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Like they've all done the math. Once you start taxing people more than a certain amount, the government revenue goes down. So they know that they're in like a happy medium. That people are afraid it's going up. I'm like, well, you really can't because the government's going to make less money, and they know that. Mm-hmm. So they'll claim they're going to raise taxes on rich people because that gets them elected, but I don't see them doing it.
Right. Well, that gets them elected in your state, but in my state, they have to do the opposite. they would say
correct, but I'm also talking about federal tax.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
State's different. State's completely different.
Yeah. Wow, and that is the truth, isn't it? But then inflation is is a tax of its own, and so when they continue to print money and say, "Oh no, we're not raising taxes, but we're just going to go ahead and run our mints a little hotter tonight," then it gets it ends up being a tax anyway because you're going to pay more for food and everything else. I'm on some county boards here in Iowa, and it's always funny listening to the county officials explain that they need more money because they have to pay for more things because of inflation, and I'm like, yeah. Okay, well, so we have to raise taxes here, or we have to assess our values of our property in our counties higher so that you can pay and meet your county budgets that are ultimately, not manipulated intentionally, but this is the cause of inflation and so forth. My goodness.
Well, I don't know about your area, but I know the town I grew up in. What's funny is there was a very well-known fact that every few years the town would come out with a scare story for all the new parents who moved to the town because it was the town had a good school system, so people frequently came in for the schools. And so what tended to happen was they would scare people. They'd say, "Oh, we're going to have to close the school." Like every 2 to 4 years, they'd claim, "Oh, well, we don't have enough money. We got to close the school. Oh, we got to close the school." Every 2 to 4 years. So the new people didn't know anybody. They're like, "Oh my God, they're going to close the school." Anyone who'd been there for a while was like, "Yeah, I've heard that before. That's obviously not happening." One year, and this is maybe more of a tribute to Massachusetts than anything else. One year, these, people that decided they need to be in everyone else's business, said, "Oh, well, I know what we can do. Let's go start a marketing campaign. Let's raise money for a marketing campaign so that we can pass this bill so we can get more money for the schools." And the school said, "Oh, we need like $300,000. We're going to close the school." Well, it didn't pass because there's still enough smart people in there. So it didn't pass. And what happens? They said, "Well, actually, we only needed 50,000." So, and I'm looking at this thinking, all right, so you spent 250,000 on a marketing campaign. So people raised 250,000 on a marketing campaign to raise taxes, and it didn't pass, and all they needed was 50,000. Talk about the ridiculousness of this whole thing. They could have taken that 250,000, given it to the town, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the town lied to them to begin with. Like the whole thing is just a charade. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. But that's how everybody works now. Everybody just lies to everybody, and they just think, "Oh well, it's fine. We need to. It's essential." Like, no, you don't. Like, you didn't even need that money. You can get by without it. And so all this stuff is just to say is, it doesn't make life easier or better for a lot of us. So.
Well, Kirk, Lexington is a beautiful town, about 36,000 people, somewhere 30, 40,000 people in there. Beautiful place, essential to American history. I think that $250,000, maybe they tucked it away, because I think that's what they get to the prize. I guess we call it a prize. You guys are being next year. You're going to build a new, monument or whatever of the 250th anniversary. And I think maybe I got the numbers wrong, but there's some money associated with that award, which is going to be going to somebody. Notably, nobody from Lexington. I noticed that. I was reading the town website there a little bit, but I love what you're telling our listeners, the opportunity to be your own, in charge of your own IRA, for one, just paying attention and learning how to invest, finding the right people to help you do that, to educate you regardless of your age, and then to teach your children the same thing, to be wise with our money and recognize that, not everything that the government puts out, whether it's, the municipality or state, federal, whatever it happens to be, is necessarily the right information. You can always rely on an economist to give you I always prefer to get my data from economists, because I feel like they have like this cold heart where they just can look at, whether it's sociology or anything, they just can look at data in a different way. And so a lot of economists make great status, just give us great stats, regardless of what the subject matter is. So, Kirk, where can people find you if they want to talk to you or get with IAG or whatever it is that share with our listeners anything that you want regarding that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. So I have a popular podcast, Money Tree Investing, that I've been doing. The podcast has been around, I think, since 2014. So we've been doing this for a while. We're easy to find there. And I mean, if you just Google my name, you'll find me. I'm on all the social media platforms. My company website is innovativewealth.com.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to learn more about our wealth management services, that's the easiest way to find us. If you want to get to know me beforehand and what I believe in and think, you can go to the podcast. That's why we do it, so people could just get acclimated with us if they want to consider getting help, or if you just want to listen and learn something. That's what we're there for. We're just trying to make everyone's lives better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kirk. There's one last thing I have to tell you. Since I mentioned, if you haven't been to Lexington, folks, you need to go and see it. They do have, obviously, many artifacts and a very famous statue there in their common. But I also have a family attachment to another statue just about 45 minutes to your northeast there in Haverhill, because I don't know if you've been up there or not. Have you ever been up to Haverhill? Have you ever seen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I go up there.
Oh, yeah, probably business and everything else. The Hannah Dustin statue. Turns out that's like our great aunt back in the day. So,
wow,
yeah, the lady,
pretty cool.
The lady with the axe, the hatchet. That's our family. So I appreciate you taking a hatchet to this information for us and really chopping up so we can get it into our minds and figure out what it is that we need to do. And I know that folks will check out your podcast and hopefully reach out to you if you've got any questions. Kirk Chisholm, I really appreciate you being a part of the Sunnyside of Life, and I know your time is valuable, so I'll let you go, but I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, well, thank you again for inviting me on the show. There's a lot of fun, and hopefully everyone can learn something from the show and take this and apply this to your life. And I think everyone needs to, regardless of kind of where your station is in life and your economic station, you can always do better. You can always improve it. Little steps every single day. And don't try to make $1 million in a day. Baby steps. We've seen secretaries be millionaires because they saved a little bit every single day. Doesn't matter your station. Just make sure that you're doing the right things and you're doing it consistently. And it's not just a one-time thing, but it's an everyday thing. So
fantastic. All right. Thank you, Kirk Chisholm.
Well, thanks for having me on, Troy.
You bet. Appreciate it. Let you get back to your clients. Appreciate what you do, and thanks for spending time with me today. Next week on the Sunnyside of Life. Now imagine flying on a plane with Donald Trump, or being invited to be on his jet as a guest. What is the life of a golf pro like? Well, we'll find out next week when we talk to Mark Klaus on the benefits of being a golf pro and the lessons learned from the game of golf. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of the Sunnyside of Life. All the Sunnyside of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunnyside of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty, and pursuits be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you Peace.